Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Andy. I hope you're doing really well wherever or whenever in the world that you are. Today, I'm gonna be talking about all the books I read in December. We're gonna be doing my December wrap up. In December, I read 10 books, which is becoming the average for me. Some months I read more than 10, some months I read less than 10, but 10 is kind of like my sweet spot. I started off December so strong. I first picked up Amari and the Great Game by B.B. Alston. This is book 2 to the Supernatural Investigations series, I think. The first book is Amari and the Night Brothers. I picked the first book up sometime the year before, and I loved it. I don't typically read a lot of middle grade, but wow, I was pleasantly surprised. I had so much fun. It kind of had that, Harry Potter nostalgia vibe while also being something totally new and fresh and exciting. So I love this series as a whole. Again, I think I buddy read this with Amber from work and we loved both books. The second book I gave 4.5 stars. I do think this second book, this sequel, had a little bit of a slow start. I don't think I was fully engaged until maybe like 30%. But once I hit that moment, it really took off from there, and I was so engrossed in the story. I thought the plot, the mystery in this second book was really compelling. It was very interesting, and it took some, unexpected twists and turns. And so I really enjoyed myself. I thought it was really fun. 4.5 stars. Next, I picked up 2 additional books from the Secrets and Spies series by Kate Bateman. As I've mentioned before, she is absolutely my favorite historical romance writer to date, I think, and I have read quite a lot of historical romance in the last few years. I had read A Counterfeit Heart maybe back in November or October. I don't know, sometime in the tail end of 2022, and I really liked it. And at the time, I thought that was the only book available on audio, but it isn't, and so I got to read books 1 and 2. Book 1 is To Steal a Heart. In this first book, you follow Marianne and Nicholas, and Marianne is kind of forced to put incriminating evidence in Nicholas's room, and he is this notorious spy master within the country, but he catches her and he has other plans for her. And so you kind of follow them as they go on this adventure and they fall in love, and it was fun. I had some issues with the pacing, I think because you don't get Nick's point of view until a little bit later in the book. So like their relationship, the pacing felt a bit clunky. But other than that, I thought it was really fun. I loved Marianne's sarcasm. Her kind of dry humor really worked for me in this book. It was adventurous and silly and romantic and everything I love in a kind of classic historical romance. And I really am enjoying this little series by Kate Bateman. At the very end of To Steal a Heart, you meet this pirating guy named Raven. And right away I was like, oh, I love him. I hope the next book is him. And it is. So the next book in this little Secrets and Spies series is A Raven's Heart. In this one, you follow Raven and Heloise. And Raven is this dual pirating guy, but he also is a spy master, and so he is an interesting character. Heloise is a undercover, secret, famous code breaker, and so they've actually known each other for a really long time. Raven is Heloise's brother's friend, so they are kind of like childhood friends, but kind of like playful enemies into adult lovers, which is a trope that I love. I honestly remember next to nothing about the plot from this one, other than I feel like they're on a mission to, save one of Raven's friends who's been kidnapped, and Heloise helps them by doing her code breaking thing. I forget. It doesn't matter. You're not really there. You're not really reading those books for the plot. You're reading them for the romance, and that I adored. Raven and Heloise have really fun chemistry. They have such like playful teasing banter because again, they were kind of like childhood rivals. He's the older brother's friend and she's not cool enough to play with them. So, she's kind of been pining over him for years and years and years, but also undercover, so has he. And yeah, at times, Raven acts kind of like an 8-year-old with a crush, and he's like kind of mean and calls her mean words, but she like gives it right back. It is really entertaining. It is funny. Again, kind of silly and ridiculous, but overall a really fun time. I gave both books 4 stars. The next book that I read was for the book club that I'm in with my sisters and our family friends, called Broads Who Book. And this was one of my sister's picks, and it was Anxious People by Fredrick Backman. This story is sort of about a bank robbery gone wrong, and you have a lot of really unique individuals all tied within this same story. I think if I were to describe this book in one word, it would be quirky. It took me a while to be invested in this story. I think the first half I felt irritated and frustrated because there are a lot of very aggravating characters that are very frustrating, and I didn't totally see where it was going, but I think that is done on purpose because the second half, once things are revealed and you get more information on characters' backgrounds, their connections to each other, it really turns into something special. I am so impressed by Backman's ability to create a lot of compassion and love for these very seemingly vapid, irritating, shallow characters. He creates so much depth and so much heart within these characters. I mean, by the end, I adored everyone, quirks and all. I listened to this one on audiobook and I highly recommend it. The audiobook narrator does a great job creating these very distinct voices for every person in the book, which I think really elevates, the audiobook listening, reading experience. So overall, yes, I had some issues with the pacing a bit, but it ended up being so sweet and just gave me all the feels. And in general, everybody in our book club almost everybody in our book club really enjoyed it. It was quite moving by the end. So yeah, I highly recommend it. I love everything that I've read by Fredrick Backman, so he's a great author to pick up, especially if you like a more emotionally moving story with these more unconventional characters. So it was great, highly recommend. I think I ended up giving it 4 or 4.5 stars. Next, I read The Worst Best Man by Mia Sosa. And interestingly, this book I read, it's been on my TBR for a really long time, but my mom recently read The Wedding Crasher and she was like, oh my God, you would love this book. And so I recognized the author's name. And so I was like, oh, let me go back and read the first book first. And I loved it. It was so fun. First of all, the author is like a local Marylander or a DC, Maryland native. And so I really loved all of the DC references, like, the mentioning of street names that I know and stores and schools and neighborhoods. Like, that was really fun. But I think even if you're not from this area, this part of the world, it is still a really fun, sweet, pretty steamy romance. In this story, you are following Carolina, who is a wedding planner who was actually jilted at the altar, and Max, who is Carolina's ex-fiance's brother. Basically, they end up having to work together for this job interview. It was really fun. I will say the pacing of their relationship felt a bit rushed, but all in all, they had great chemistry. They had good banter. I liked the plot a lot. Like, I thought it kept me really interested and I thought it hit all the right beats. And yeah, by the end, I was like, well, that was sweet. And I will say the steamy scenes are, I think, pretty good. So all in all, I really enjoyed this and I ended up giving it 4 stars. Next, I read The Unleashing by Shelly Laurenston. This is the first book in the Call of Crows series, and I gave it 3.5 stars. It was a fun time. In this first book, you are following Kara, who is a Marine or an ex-Marine, and she's living in LA and she's kind of unexpectedly nearly murdered, and one of the Vikings gods like brings her back to life, school maybe, and she gets inducted in this little group of crows, and it was interesting. I had a lot of those kind of logistical questions at first, like who is who, who's on the same team, who is rivals, what's the deal with this magic? And a lot of those got answered by the end of the book. So despite my initial confusion, I did end up really having a good time. So I mentioned Kara. Her love interest in this first book is Vig, and I loved him. He's kind of an awkward, brooding, mysterious, but quirky kind of guy. I liked him from page one. I thought he was really charming, and I thought he was a good, compatible love interest for this kind of like strong-willed Kara character. I will say it took me a little bit of time to warm up to Kara. She sometimes bothered me, but I can't quite put my finger on like why things that she would say or do like irritated me. I did warm up to her by the end, and by the end I was very content with their little romance relationship. I definitely enjoyed getting to know kind of the whole cast of characters within all these clans. I enjoyed getting to know the world a little bit better and the magic a little bit better and like the gods and lore a little bit better. And this book ends on a bit of a cliffhanger. So I am curious to continue. I don't know when I'll pick up the next book, but I liked it enough to definitely continue and see where this series goes. Next, I read all 3 books in the Sorry if my camera's shaking. Francis is rubbing up against the stand. Next, I read all 3 books in the Lovelight Farm series by B.K. Borison. And my overall thoughts about this little series is it's sweet. I don't think it's the best romance series I've ever read. There were moments where I was really charmed and then moments where I was kind of like rolling my eyes a little bit. So I'll walk you quickly through my thoughts on each book. This first book is Lovelight Farms, and you follow Stella and Luca. And the tropes in here are fake dating. She owns a Christmas tree farm, and to help boost popularity and notoriety and bring in new customers, she applies for this, I don't know, the social media contest kind of thing. And on her application, she kind of fibs and says that she owns this Christmas tree farm with her boyfriend. When it's revealed that she's one of the nominees and the social media lady is gonna come out to the farm and do all the interviews, she asks her best friend Luca if he will pretend to be her boyfriend to help them win this contest. It is obvious from page 1 that they are into each other. And I'm a little confused as to how neither one of them could see it. It was so painfully obvious, and they've been kind of pining over each other for the last 9 years. And so it just makes me think like both of them are a little bit dense, because it was so obvious to literally everyone in their town, everyone in their close circle. So I'm just kind of like, guys, come on. It's everyone can tell that you love each other. Like, why can't you admit to it? I also didn't feel like this story was very Christmassy, despite its setting being a Christmas tree farm. Maybe it's because it doesn't actually occur over Christmas. I don't know. But I will say there were some things that I liked about this book. I loved the small town setting, and I do think they had good chemistry overall. And I was rooting for them in the end. I mean, I think if you're looking for just a cozy little romance, this could be a fun one to pick up, but I think go into it with just like tapered expectations, because I think this book got a lot of hype on TikTok and BookTube and like all those social media platforms around the holidays this year. So I think if you pick it up, just, it's fine. It's sweet, but it's like nothing great, I don't think. I gave this first book 3.5 stars. So I liked it enough, and I was curious about the next couple, so I jumped into book 2, which was In the Weeds. In this one, you're following Evie or Evelyn, who's actually the social media person from book 1, and Beckett, who's like the main farmer from the Christmas tree farm. He's a bit awkward and grumpy, but I found him quite charming. I think in the second book, the transition from like book 1 to book 2 was a little clunky and like a little choppy. Like I felt like at times there were too many references to things in the first book, and then at times I kind of skipped through things. I don't know, it just felt like a bit of an awkward transition, but kind of once you get past that first maybe like 15%. It is smooth sailing from there. I enjoyed this one as well. This is a bit of a second chance romance, and it is dual POV, so you get chapters from both Evie and Beckett's perspectives, which I really think helped this story out. All in all, again, I liked this. I liked this one a little bit less than the first book, and I'm not totally sure what that is. I gave this one 3 stars. I think it's a sweet, light, low stakes kind of listen. I was listening to this audiobook kind of before bed, and it was delightful, but nothing special. So I enjoyed it, and I was like, well, I've read the first two, I might as well finish this little trilogy. So I did pick up the 3rd book. In this 3rd book, you're following Layla, who is the baker from the Christmas Tree Farm in book 1, and Caleb, who's this really like sweet guy. In the first book, I think he's referenced as one of the local police officers, but since then, by this 3rd book, he's actually now a substitute teacher. He's teaching Spanish. So I think he's a man of many trades. This book, again, has a bit of that fake dating trope. What they decide to do is the two of them are kind of having bad luck with dating for different reasons. And he suggests, well, like, let's do a trial run. Let's like pretend to date each other so that he can learn any mistakes that he's making and she can experience what it feels like to, you know, have some wins on dates and to have someone treat her with kindness and respect and, you know, not be a total dick. So this is the bargain that they strike. And of course, as they're fake dating, real feelings develop. And again, overall, it's sweet. In this 3rd book, I didn't love the male audiobook narrator, but aside from that, again, it was like a nice read. It was cozy. I was happy that I read it by the end. So again, I gave this one 3 stars. Overall, as a series, this whole 3-book companion set is sweet. Like, it's sweet, it's cozy, it's comfortable, nothing new, nothing special in my opinion, but it is a delight. So pick it up if you're looking for something really wholesome, low stakes, and just nice to read. The last book that I picked up in December was one of my most highly anticipated releases for 2022, and that was A Wicked Game by Kate Bateman. This is the 3rd book in the Ruthless Rival series, and I love this series. It is so good. In this one, you are following Morgan and Harriet, and they are childhood enemies to adult lovers, which I've learned thanks to this series is one of my favorite tropes, mostly because there is so much playful teasing and banter and arguing, and I just think it creates such good chemistry. Something I liked especially about this 3rd book is right at the beginning, both characters, like in their own heads, in their own POVs, admit to having feelings for one another, but kind of recognize that they feel stuck in this kind of rivalry cycle. And so individually, they're both trying to figure out ways to kind of get unstuck. And I just thought that that premise made this relationship dynamic make sense, and like the progression of it makes sense. I didn't find that I was irritated by any miscommunication or anything like that. So that really worked for me. That kind of setup really worked. And in this book especially, I loved Harriet. She's a map maker like her dad. And I love a very highly competent, confident, strong-willed female protagonist, and Harriet absolutely is that. All in all, I thought this was an excellent 3rd installment. I love this series as a whole. It is so much fun. All of the banter and chemistry within each of these books is superb to me. It's like what I want every book to feel like, especially in historical romance. So all in all, I love this. I gave it 5 stars. It was so fun. I loved it. All right. Those are all the books that I read in December. In the comments down below, definitely let me know what you read in December. Did you have any home runs? Did you have any misses? Did you read Lovelight Farms? What did you think? I hope you all had a wonderful holiday season, a happy new year, and I'll see you guys in the next video soon. Bye.